almost opened the door when I heard someone whisper my name from the hotel hallway. The only reason I didn't was because I remembered something the receptionist had told me when I checked in. There were no other guests on my floor. At 2:17 in the morning, I heard 3 knocks. Then someone whispered my name again. When I finally looked through the peephole, the hallway was empty. But when I checked my phone the next morning, I discovered I had recorded something standing outside my door, something that shouldn't have been there. Story 1. The room across the hall. This happened during a business trip in Colorado. I had been driving for almost 8 hours that day, visiting several clients in small towns outside Denver. By the time I reached the hotel, I was exhausted and honestly didn't care where I slept. The hotel was an older building that had clearly been renovated at some point. The lobby looked nice enough, but there was something strangely old-fashioned about the place. Dark wooden walls, brass lamps, faded paintings, and a huge staircase that led toward the upper floors. The woman at the front desk gave me my key card. "4th floor," she said. I asked if the elevator worked. She smiled. Most of the time, I laughed, thinking she was joking. She wasn't. The elevator made a horrible grinding sound on the way up, and when the doors opened, I stepped into a completely empty hallway. My room was 416. As I walked toward it, I noticed the room directly across from mine. There was no 417. I actually stopped for a second because I thought I'd skipped a door. I looked again. I assumed it was a numbering mistake. My room was directly across from 418, so I didn't think much about it. I went inside, ordered dinner, worked for another hour, and eventually went to sleep. At around 2:17 a.m., I woke up. I don't know what woke me. The room was completely dark. Then I heard footsteps. Slow footsteps. Someone was walking down the hallway. I stayed in bed and listened. The footsteps got closer. Then they stopped directly outside my room. I waited for a knock. Instead, I heard someone whisper, "Michael?" That was my name. I immediately sat up. For several seconds, I didn't move. Then came 3 soft knocks. Knock, knock, knock. I thought maybe another guest was drunk and had mistaken my room for theirs. I got out of bed and walked toward the door. My hand was almost on the handle when I remembered the receptionist. She had told me the 4th floor was almost completely empty because several rooms were being renovated. I looked through the peephole. Nothing. The hallway was empty. I waited another few seconds. Still nothing. Then I noticed something strange. The light underneath my door had disappeared. Someone was standing outside. I could see the shadow of their feet. But when I looked through the peephole again, there was nobody there. I stepped backward. The shadow remained. Then it slowly moved away from the door. I heard footsteps walking toward the opposite side of the hallway, toward room 418. I heard a door open, then close. I stayed awake for another hour. Eventually, I convinced myself it had been another guest. At around 3 a.m., I finally picked up my phone and started recording. I pointed the camera toward the door and placed the phone on the nightstand. I don't even remember falling asleep. When I woke up, it was almost 7. The first thing I did was check my phone. The camera had recorded for almost 4 hours. I skipped through the video. For most of it, nothing happened. Then I reached the part around 2:17. I turned the volume up. The footsteps were clearly audible. Then came the 3 knocks, and then the whisper, "Michael." I paused the video. I could hear my own breathing. Then I watched the next few seconds. The hallway light beneath my door disappeared. A shadow appeared. But there was something wrong with it. The shadow didn't look like a person's shadow. It was too tall, and the feet were positioned strangely, as if whoever was standing there was facing my door while their body was turned in another direction. Then the shadow slowly disappeared. I kept watching. A few seconds later, something crossed the bottom of the door. It looked like a hand. I immediately stopped the video. I decided I was checking out. When I reached the lobby, the same receptionist was working. I told her I'd heard someone outside my room during the night. She looked concerned. I asked her who was staying in 418. She stared at me. 418? I nodded. The room across from mine. She looked at the computer. Then she looked back at me. "Sir, 418 isn't occupied." I said I knew. Then I asked why. She hesitated. "That room hasn't been used in years." I thought she meant it was being renovated. She shook her head. "No, it's permanently closed." I showed her the video. She watched the footage. When the shadow appeared, she immediately lowered the phone. She didn't look scared. She looked confused. I asked her what was wrong. She asked me something instead. "Did you hear knocking 3 times?" I said yes. Her face changed. She told me that years earlier, an elderly guest had died in that room. Apparently, he'd suffered a heart attack during the night. The hotel's old staff had reported hearing knocking from inside the room afterward. 3 knocks. Always 3. Management eventually stopped renting the room. I asked why they hadn't told me. She said because, according to the hotel's current records, room 418 didn't exist anymore. I thought she was exaggerating, so I asked her to come upstairs with me. She agreed. When we reached the 4th floor, I immediately pointed toward the opposite side, but the door wasn't there. I froze. There was no 418. There was just a blank section of wall. I looked at my own room, then 415 beside it. The receptionist stared at the wall. I don't understand. Neither did I. I walked closer. The wall looked completely normal. No door, no frame, nothing. I asked her where the room had gone. She didn't answer. Then I noticed something. There were faint scratches in the wallpaper. 4 vertical lines, like someone had dragged their fingernails down the wall. I touched them. The wallpaper was cold, much colder than the rest of the hallway. We went back downstairs. The manager eventually came out. He didn't want to discuss the room, but after I showed him the video, he finally admitted there had once been a room there. He said the hotel's 4th floor had been redesigned years ago. The room numbers were changed, several rooms were removed, but he couldn't explain why I had seen a door, or why my camera had recorded it. I checked out that morning. I drove home and tried to forget everything. For several weeks I succeeded. Then one night I was cleaning old videos from my phone. I found the hotel recording again. I almost deleted it. Instead, I watched it one final time. I slowed down the part where the shadow appeared. Then I noticed something I'd completely missed. The figure wasn't standing outside my room. It was standing at the end of the hallway, in front of the wall where room 418 was supposed to be. I zoomed in. The figure raised one hand, then it knocked against the wall. 3 times. Knock, knock, knock. I watched the footage again. This time I noticed something even worse. The figure wasn't facing the wall. It was facing the camera, facing me. Then the video ended. I deleted it. I thought that was the end. Until about 2 months later, when I stayed at another hotel in a completely different state. It was a normal hotel, modern building, bright lobby, nothing unusual. I checked into room 206. That night, around 2:17 a.m., I woke up. I immediately knew why. 3 knocks. Knock, knock, knock. I didn't move. Then I heard someone whisper my name. Michael. I stared at the bedroom door. I didn't answer. The whisper came again. This time it sounded farther away, from the hallway. Then I heard footsteps, slowly moving toward the elevator. I stayed in bed until morning. When I finally checked out, I asked the receptionist whether there was a room directly across from mine. She checked the floor plan. There should be, she said. I asked what room number it was. She looked confused. Then she said, there's supposed to be a room 207. Supposed to be? She turned the monitor toward me. Room 207 had been removed from the hotel's records decades earlier. I didn't say anything. I simply left. I still travel for work. I still stay in hotels. But now I have a strange habit. Whenever I enter a hotel room, I look directly across the hallway. If there's a door that doesn't have a number, I don't stay there, because I still don't know what happened in that first hotel. Maybe I was exhausted. Maybe I hallucinated the entire thing. Maybe there was some mistake in the hotel's records. But I know what my camera recorded. And I know what I heard. 3 knocks, my name, and a room that wasn't supposed to exist. The only thing that still bothers me is this. That first night, the voice outside my door asked if I was awake. I never told anyone that. Not the receptionist, not the manager, nobody. So if the voice wasn't real, how did it know I was awake? Story 2. The Voice from the Attic. The first thing my sister heard that night wasn't a scream. It was someone quietly humming in the attic. She lived alone. There was no one else in the house, and the attic door was locked. At least that's what she thought. This happened to my younger sister Claire about 2 years ago. I was living around 20 minutes away from her at the time, and we spoke almost every day. Claire had recently moved into an old 2-story house on the edge of town. It wasn't a beautiful house, but she loved it. It had a small front porch, a narrow driveway, 3 bedrooms upstairs, and an unfinished attic above the 2nd floor. The attic wasn't accessible from inside the house. There was a pull-down staircase in the hallway ceiling, but Claire had never opened it. The previous owner had told her there was nothing up there except old insulation and some storage boxes. Claire wasn't particularly interested in it. She had enough things to worry about. She was working long hours and trying to settle into the new house. Everything was normal for the first few weeks. Then small things started happening. The first was the kitchen window. Claire noticed one morning that it was unlocked. She always locked it before going to bed. She assumed she'd forgotten. A few days later, she found the back door slightly open. Again, she blamed herself. Then she noticed one of the dining room chairs had been moved. She remembered leaving it near the table. When she came home from work, it was sitting several feet away. She didn't think much of it. I did. I told her to change the locks. She laughed and told me I watched too many horror movies. I reminded her that old houses sometimes had bad locks. She eventually changed the front and back door locks. For a while, everything was fine. Then, one Friday evening, she called me at around 11:30 p.m. I could tell immediately that something was wrong. She wasn't crying. She wasn't panicking. She was whispering. I asked what happened. She said, "Someone is upstairs." I sat up. I asked whether she was sure. She said she had been downstairs watching television when she heard a floorboard creak above her. She muted the TV. A few seconds later, she heard another creak, then another. Slow footsteps, moving across the upstairs hallway. I told her to leave the house. She said the front door was directly beneath the staircase. If someone was upstairs, they would hear her leaving. I told her to go through the kitchen and climb over the back fence. She said the kitchen door was locked. Then she whispered, "Wait." I asked what happened. She said she could hear something. I listened through the phone. At first, I heard nothing. Then, very faintly, I heard music. Someone was humming, a slow melody. Claire recognized it. It was an old song our mother used to sing when we were children. Neither of us had heard it in years. I told Claire not to make a sound. Then I called the police. While we waited, Claire moved into the downstairs bathroom. She locked the door. I stayed on the phone with her. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then we heard footsteps again. This time they were coming down the stairs, slowly, one step at a time. Claire was breathing so quietly I could barely hear her. The footsteps stopped outside the bathroom. There was silence. Then someone knocked, once. Claire didn't move. Another knock. Then a man's voice said, "Claire?" Her entire body went rigid. She knew the voice. It belonged to her former boyfriend, Ryan. They had broken up several months earlier. The relationship had ended badly. Ryan had repeatedly shown up at places where Claire happened to be. He had once waited outside her workplace for almost an hour. She had told him to stop contacting her. He eventually did, or at least she thought he had. Claire whispered into the phone, "It's him." I told her not to answer. The voice outside the bathroom came again. "I know you're in there." Claire started crying silently. Then the footsteps moved away. We heard the front door open, then close. A few seconds later, the police arrived. 2 officers entered the house. They searched every room. Nobody was there. They checked the upstairs bedrooms, the closets, the basement, the garage. Nothing. The attic was the only place they hadn't checked. One officer looked at the pull-down staircase. Claire told him she had never opened it. He pulled it down. The wooden stairs unfolded from the ceiling. The attic above was completely dark. The officer shined his flashlight upward. At first, nothing looked unusual. Then he stopped. There was a sleeping bag, a plastic water bottle, several food wrappers, and a phone charger. Claire immediately started shaking. Someone had been living up there. The officer climbed into the attic. A few seconds later, he called for his partner. There were photographs, dozens of them. They were pictures of Claire. Some had been taken outside the house. Others showed her getting into her car. One showed her sleeping on the couch. Another showed her standing in the kitchen. She had no idea anyone had been watching her. The police searched the attic again. They found a small camera mounted between 2 wooden beams. It was pointed directly at the staircase leading into the house. Whoever had been hiding up there could see almost everything that happened downstairs. The police immediately suspected Ryan. But there was a problem. Ryan had an alibi. He was working in another city that night. His employer confirmed he had been there. Police couldn't arrest him based solely on the photographs. Claire stayed with me that night. She didn't want to go back to the house. The next morning, police returned to investigate. They found something else, a second access point. The attic had a small exterior hatch on the side of the roof. It was hidden behind an old wooden panel. The lock had been broken. That meant whoever had been hiding there didn't need to enter through the house. They could climb onto the roof from the garage. Claire had no idea. Neither did the previous owner. The police believed someone had been entering the attic for weeks, possibly months. They collected the photographs and equipment. Claire changed every lock again. She also installed cameras around the property. For the next few days, nothing happened. Then 3 nights later, one of the cameras recorded movement. At 2:42 a.m., a figure appeared near the garage. The person was wearing a dark hoodie. They walked toward the side of the house, then disappeared from view. The police were called, but by the time they arrived, nobody was there. The next morning, Claire found something on her front porch. A small cardboard box. Inside was an old photograph. It was a picture of Claire as a child. She immediately called me. I asked where the photograph came from. She didn't know. It wasn't in the attic. It had been taken from her mother's house. That was impossible. Claire's mother lived in another state. The photograph had been stored in an album there. Claire hadn't even known anyone had a copy. The police became much more interested. They began investigating Ryan again. This time they discovered something. Ryan had a friend who worked for a company that had previously provided maintenance services at Claire's new house. That friend had access to old property records and had visited the house several months before Claire moved in. But there still wasn't enough evidence to connect him to the attic, until the camera caught him. About a week later, the outdoor security system detected someone near the back fence. Claire was away at work. I was at my apartment. The camera sent an alert to her phone. She forwarded it to me. The person was standing at the edge of the property. The face was difficult to see, but he was staring directly toward the house. Then he raised one hand and waved. Claire called the police. They arrived within minutes. The man was gone, but they found fresh footprints leading toward the garage. Then one officer noticed something. The garage door was slightly open. They entered. There was nobody inside. But on the floor was a small black backpack. Inside were several things: gloves, a flashlight, bottled water, a change of clothes, and a notebook. The notebook contained dates, lots of them. Each date corresponded to a day Claire had been home alone. The police finally had enough evidence to identify the person. It wasn't Ryan. It was Ryan's older brother, Marcus. He had been obsessed with Claire for months. Apparently, he blamed her for the breakup because he believed she had treated Ryan unfairly. Marcus had discovered that Claire was moving into the house. He had used his previous access to the property to learn about the attic. Then he began hiding there. The police arrested him later that evening. Claire thought the nightmare was finally over. She moved out of the house within a month. The new place was a small apartment on the other side of town. She felt safer there. For several months, nothing happened. Then one afternoon, she received an envelope in the mail. There was no return address. Inside was a single photograph. It showed the old house. Claire immediately recognized it, but something was wrong. The photograph had been taken after she moved out. The house was empty. The curtains were gone. The windows were dark. And someone had written a sentence on the back. "I like the attic better." Claire gave the photograph to the police. They couldn't determine who sent it. Marcus was still in custody. His brother was never connected to the photograph. There was no obvious explanation. Claire eventually stopped talking about it. She changed her phone number. She deleted her social media accounts. She moved to another city. And as far as I know, she's never had another incident. But there is one detail about that story that still bothers me. The police originally believed Marcus had entered the attic through the roof hatch. That made sense. Except when they searched the attic, they found something else. A second sleeping bag, a second flashlight, and another phone charger. There had been enough supplies for 2 people. When I asked the detective about it, he told me they couldn't prove another person had been there. Maybe Marcus had simply kept extra equipment. Maybe. But I remember the night Claire called me. She said she heard footsteps upstairs. Then she heard someone humming. The song was one our mother used to sing. Marcus had never met our mother. He wouldn't have known that song. And Claire never told the police what she heard next. She told me afterward. After the footsteps stopped outside the bathroom, the voice had whispered something. Not her name, not a threat, just 4 words. She still remembers me. Claire didn't recognize the voice, and neither do I. Because Ryan didn't say it. Marcus didn't say it. And according to Claire, the voice came from inside the attic. Not from the stairs, not from the hallway, from directly above her. Sometimes I wonder if the person the police caught was really the person who had been watching her, because if Marcus was hiding in that attic, who was the second person sleeping beside him? Story 3, the stranger who knew my routine. The first message I received from him wasn't threatening, it was almost friendly. He simply wrote, "I think I saw you today." I ignored it. Then he sent another message, "You always buy the same drink." That got my attention. Because I hadn't posted a picture that day, I hadn't checked in anywhere, and I definitely hadn't told anyone where I was. What I didn't know at the time was that this stranger wasn't trying to scare me. He was testing how much I would notice. Script. This happened when I was 21 and living in a small apartment near my college. I had recently started a photography account online. Nothing serious. I mostly posted pictures of buildings, streets, coffee shops, old signs, and whatever else caught my attention. My account was public. I never thought that was dangerous. I didn't post my address. I didn't post my phone number. I didn't even use my real last name. So when someone named Evan started commenting on my photographs, I didn't think much of it. He seemed normal. He complimented my pictures, asked what camera I used. Sometimes he'd send messages asking where I'd taken a particular photograph. I answered a few times. Eventually he asked, "Do you usually go there alone?" I thought that was a strange question. I didn't answer. He didn't ask again. A few days later, he sent another message. "I saw you downtown today." I laughed when I read it. There were thousands of people downtown. Maybe he had recognized me from my profile picture. I ignored the message. Then he sent, "You were wearing the green jacket." I stopped. I had been wearing a green jacket. It wasn't visible in any recent photograph on my account. I checked his profile. Nothing. No real photographs. No friends. Almost no information. I blocked him. That should have been the end. It wasn't. 2 weeks later, a new account followed me. Different username, different profile picture, but the same writing style. The account sent, "Why did you block me?" I blocked it immediately. Another account appeared the following week. Then another. I stopped accepting followers. I made my profile private. I deleted old posts. I thought that would solve the problem. For several months, nothing happened. Then one Saturday afternoon, I went to my usual coffee shop. I'd been going there almost every day for nearly a year. I ordered the same drink I always ordered. I sat near the window. While I was working on my laptop, my phone vibrated. A message from an unknown account. "Still drinking iced coffee in winter?" I looked around. There were maybe 10 people inside. A man near the entrance was reading a newspaper. A woman was talking to the barista. 2 students were sitting in the corner. Nobody looked suspicious. I replied, "Who are you?" The answer came almost immediately. "Turn around." I didn't. I stared at my screen. Another message appeared. "Good. Then, don't." I suddenly felt cold. I closed my laptop. I walked outside. I called my friend Daniel. I told him what had happened. He came to meet me. We checked the area around the coffee shop. Nothing. The police told me there wasn't much they could do without a direct threat. They advised me to save screenshots, so I did. For the next few weeks, I stopped going to that coffee shop. I changed my routine. Instead of walking to campus, I drove. Instead of going to the gym in the evening, I went early in the morning. I stopped posting photographs. I thought I was becoming paranoid. Then I received a photograph. It showed my apartment building. The picture had been taken at night. I recognized the angle immediately. The person who took it had been standing across the street. I called the police. They came to my apartment and looked around. Nothing was missing. There were no signs of forced entry. They told me to consider installing a camera. I did. For the first time, I felt like I was actually protecting myself. Then, 3 nights later, the camera detected movement. At 1:36 a.m., someone was standing across the street. The figure was too far away to identify. He stood there for almost 7 minutes. Then he walked away. I saved the footage. The next morning, I noticed something disturbing. The figure hadn't been looking at my apartment. He had been looking directly at the security camera. I called Daniel. We watched the footage several times. Then Daniel noticed something. The person was holding a phone. At one point, he raised it. The camera angle showed the screen briefly. There was a picture on it. My apartment. Taken from inside. I felt sick. Someone had a photograph of the inside of my apartment. I searched everything. Windows, doors, closets. Nothing. Then I remembered my bedroom window. It faced the street. The blinds were usually open. I closed them. That night I slept at Daniel's house. The next morning I received another message. "You're not home." I didn't answer. A second message appeared. "I know." Then nothing. I changed apartments. I moved to another part of the city. I changed my phone number. I deleted every social media account. For almost a year, nothing happened. Eventually, I started believing it was over. I created a new photography account under a completely different name. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't follow my old friends. I didn't post pictures of myself. I only uploaded photographs of landscapes. For a while, everything was fine. Then I uploaded a picture of a lake. It was taken during a weekend trip. The next morning, someone commented, "Nice place." I deleted the comment. Another appeared. "I remember that road." I deleted the account. I didn't tell anyone where I'd been. That evening, Daniel called me. He asked if I had received something. I asked what he meant. He sent me a photograph. It showed me standing beside the lake. The picture had been taken from behind a tree. I hadn't noticed anyone there. Daniel said the photograph had been sent to him from an unknown number. The message underneath said, "Tell her I can still find her." I reported everything again. This time, the police took it much more seriously. They asked me to stop changing accounts and instead preserve everything. They started investigating the previous messages. Eventually, they found a connection. The person had been using public photographs and location data to track my movements. But that didn't explain everything. Some information couldn't have come from my posts. The police asked me about my apartment. I told them everything I could remember. Then one detective asked, "Did you ever have maintenance done?" I said yes. About 8 months earlier, the landlord had sent someone to repair a leaking pipe under my kitchen sink. I hadn't thought about it. The detective did. They checked the company. The employee who had come to my apartment no longer worked there. His name was Evan, the same first name used by the original account. I thought that was the answer. It wasn't. The police found him. He admitted creating some of the accounts. He admitted photographing me. He admitted following me. But then he said something that confused everyone. He claimed he hadn't sent the most recent messages. He said someone else had been using information from his accounts. The police didn't believe him. He was arrested. I thought it was finally over. For almost 6 months, there was silence. Then one morning, I received a package. No return address. Inside was a small black notebook. I opened it. Every page contained dates, not just dates, times, places, things I'd done. Most were from before I ever met Evan. Some were from months before I started my photography account. One page described me sitting in my childhood bedroom. Another described a family trip I'd taken when I was 17. There was no way Evan could have known those things. I took the notebook to the police. They couldn't explain it. They checked Evan's apartment. They found no second notebook, no evidence connecting him to the older entries. Then they noticed something else. The handwriting changed halfway through the notebook. The first half belonged to Evan. The second half didn't. The detective asked me if I recognized the handwriting. I didn't. I told him I'd never seen it before. Then he turned to the final page. There was only one sentence. "You keep looking for the person behind you." Underneath it was another sentence. "You should look ahead." I didn't understand what it meant until that evening. I was driving home. It was almost dark. I stopped at a red light. My phone vibrated. Unknown number. One message. "Don't turn around." I stared at the screen. I didn't move. The light changed. I drove. Another message arrived. "Good. Then, you're learning." I threw the phone into the passenger seat. I drove directly to the police station. They checked the message. The number was untraceable. The account disappeared shortly afterward. That was the last message I ever received. At least directly. Years have passed since then. I rarely use social media. I don't post locations. I don't share photographs of my home. And I never use the same routine for too long. Sometimes people ask me why. I tell them I had a bad experience with someone online. I never explain the entire story, because there is one thing I still can't explain. Evan was arrested, his accounts were deleted, his devices were taken by police. And according to investigators, he was responsible for most of the stalking. But the notebook contained information he couldn't possibly have known. Information from years before I had ever used the internet. And sometimes, when I think about that final message, I wonder what the person meant. Don't turn around. Maybe it was just another attempt to frighten me. Maybe someone was watching me from behind. Or maybe the message meant something completely different, because the last time I received a message from that unknown number, I wasn't alone in the car. My friend Daniel was sitting beside me. He saw the message. He read it himself. And after we reached the police station, he asked me something I still don't know how to answer. He said, "How did they know I was with you?" 3 stories, 3 different kinds of fear, a room that shouldn't have existed, a person hiding inside a house, and a stranger who knew things that nobody online should have known. But maybe that's what makes these stories so disturbing. The scariest warning isn't always a broken window or a stranger standing outside. Sometimes it's a tiny detail, someone knowing your routine, someone knowing where you were, someone mentioning something you never posted. And by the time you realize how much they know, they may already know far more than you think. So if you enjoyed these stories, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because there are plenty more terrifying stories waiting. And before you leave tonight, check one thing. Make sure your doors are locked. Make sure your windows are closed. And if your phone suddenly lights up with a message from an unknown number, think twice before you answer. Because sometimes the person sending it isn't asking where you are. They already know.